It's time again for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show covering fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation and destinations right here in the region you live and play in. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the world-famous wedding ring spinner, by Loophole, America's Optics Authority, and by Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Northwestern Outdoors is also sponsored by Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon, where you'll find both nature and fun. By Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing, offering you the affordable Canadian fishing trip of a lifetime. And by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors. So grab your fishing rod or hunting gear, load up the boat or lace up your boots, and let's head outdoors with your host, John Cruz.
You know, our public lands here in the western U.S. represent both our greatest opportunity for outdoor recreation and at times one of our biggest headaches hindering our ability to recreate outdoors. There has been a lively debate over the last couple of years about how we should manage our public lands and if we can do it better than we're doing it right now. You can certainly hear this debate about our national parks, but much of the focus isn't about the Park Service. It's about how our U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management lands are managed. There's a number of issues here at play to include a huge backlog of maintenance and upkeep that has fallen by the wayside, affecting roads, trails, and campgrounds that allow us to access these lands. There's bureaucratic rules and permitting that makes it hard to maintain a multi-use sustainable land holding and do things like harvest timber, which in turn is going to reduce fuel for fires. Another issue, the seeming inaction of the Forest Service at times when it comes to decision making, because no matter what they do, somebody is going to file a lawsuit against them, and that's going to cost the government and the Forest Service a lot of time and money. And then there's the problem of fire borrowing, a practice where over 50% of the Forest Service budget is going to wildfire suppression efforts, leaving very little for the Forest Service to use to actually manage and maintain the Forest Service lands they're tasked to take care of. Take it all together, and you have a number of Republican congressmen saying these lands should be turned over to the states, which they argue are much more efficient when it comes to getting things done and managing lands. These are all things that were touched on during a recent visit to East Wenatchee, Washington by Congressman Dan Newhouse from Eastern Washington and Representative Rob Bishop from Utah, who chairs the House Natural Resource Committee. We also got to hear from a lot of concerned citizens at this meeting, and we'll share some of their concerns with you, along with some thoughts on these issues from Representative Dan Newhouse during this next hour. The idea of transferring management of Forest Service and BLM lands may sound appealing, but if you are a hunter, a hiker, an angler, or anyone else who likes to recreate in Forest Service or BLM lands, you should probably be very concerned, because there's a real possibility you'll be shut out of these lands if they are transferred to state or county control. Greg Bafundo, who works for Trout Unlimited and is a member of the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, will explain more about this and help me analyze what went on at the hour-and-a-half-long Q&A with these two congressmen in East Wenatchee. In addition to this, we've got hunting and fishing reports from Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, along with some great advice from Joe Mosier, the hunting guide who works for Sportsman's Warehouse. If you didn't get your buck on opening day, Joe has got some tips to help you fill your tag before the season ends. As usual, we've got our extended Max Minute and our Sportsman's Warehouse trivia question of the week. And take it all together, we've got a lot of the outdoors headed your way. But before we wade into the debate about how to manage our public lands and get that buck, it's time for another edition of Sportsman Spotlight. This week, Matt and Tom will tell you about a North Idaho custom rifle maker and what he has to offer. Sportsman Spotlight is sponsored by Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing, offering affordable, all-inclusive fishing vacations out of Port Hardy, BC for salmon, halibut, and more. Check out his website at coastwidesportsfishing.com.
This is Sportsman Spotlight with Matt and Tom. It's something I think we can all agree on. A comfortable, straight-shooting rifle is nearly worth its weight in gold. If you're in the market for a unique custom rifle, check out Selkirk Mountain Precision Gunsmithing. Corey Stevie of North Idaho specializes in customizing each rifle to the customer.
This pretty much build custom rifles to customer specs and, whatever the customer wants or needs in a rifle, and I just, build it to what he wants and, caliber choice, stock choice, scope choice. I do iron open sight, smaller calibers, and I also like to do large caliber rifles for, up close game guide guns, Alaska brown bear type rifles or Africa type rifles and the heavy bore calibers. I guarantee a half minute of angle accuracy on, all the long range hunting rifles I build, and pretty much everything will have hand loads will do much better than that even.
That's pretty impressive to take a brand new gun out of the box and get that kind of accuracy. But Corey, I was going to ask you, what's your most popular rifle you guys build?
Probably the most popular stuff is probably the long-range hunting rifles.
Long-range shooting is becoming more and more popular. It seems like everybody's doing it. And I guess if you've got the right gun in your hands, it can make it a whole lot easier. Don't forget to go online and check out Corey's custom rifles at Selkirk Mountain Precision Gunsmithing, or you can check it out on Facebook.
You've just heard Sportsman Spotlight with Matt Rice. Feel free to contact us at sportsmanspotlight.com.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking equipment. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. It's not often we get to talk to a member of Congress, but we get the opportunity today. Representative Dan Newhouse is on the Natural Resources Committee, and he is advocating for a new way to manage our public lands. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate being with you. I listen to your program on the radio station I have in my pickup at home, and so it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for not changing the channel when you do. Moving on to a couple questions. You're looking at a new way to manage public lands. Tell our listeners about this.
As far as the forest lands are concerned, what we've seen in the last couple of years, catastrophic wildfires, particularly in north central Washington. The 4th Congressional District has been hit significantly by these catastrophic fires. So we're looking at ways that we can enhance the Forest Service's ability and wherewithal to be able to do a better job of management, to get ahead of these catastrophic fires, to prevent them from happening. And I don't know if people understand this. The Forest Service has literally burned up over 50% of their entire budget fighting fires such as we've seen the last couple of years in the state of Washington. And what that does is preclude their ability to perform the valuable management activities that would mitigate or would help prevent these catastrophic fires from happening in the first place. So we find ourselves in this terrible circle that we have to break. And so we're looking at ways that we can intercede there, break that cycle, so that we can get back to where the Forest Service can actually perform the valuable management activities they have to, and we don't have to keep shelling out these tremendous amounts of money to fight these catastrophic fires.
If you talk to some folks from the Forest Service, they would say that the practice of fire borrowing, which has, you're exactly right, they've gone up from 16% of their budget in the 1970s to 52% last year. They would say the fix is appropriating money through FEMA instead of making it come out of their own funds.
Well, that's an interesting concept and something that we've been working on in Congress to look at catastrophic fires more in the way that you would look at a hurricane or a devastating flood or some weather event, because essentially these are natural disasters too and should be treated more as such, instead of coming directly out of the Forest Service's budget that takes away from so many other valuable activities that they need to perform. So that's definitely a concept that I think has a lot of merit.
Getting back to public lands, I understand you advocate for transferring management of BLM lands and Forest Service lands, in many cases, to the states.
Absolutely, if it makes sense. What I'm looking for is a method that we can allow the federal government to transfer these lands, not buy additional lands until they do, and then they can use those proceeds if it makes sense to buy other lands that may be locked between what is already federal lands. And I think in that way, not only it would be a more efficient system, but it would improve access to sportsmen, to recreationalists, to those valuable lands that people want to use for public access.
Sportsmen in organizations like the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers would say that you just have to look at Oregon to see that this doesn't work. The Elliott State Forest is for sale to the highest bidder at this point, and there's real concern that once that happens, citizens will be locked out from recreating there.
Well, my interest certainly is to enhance the ability for the public to access these lands, to preserve hunters' and sportsmen's ability to use these lands. So I'm looking at ways that we can more efficiently force the federal government to dispose of surplus lands where it makes sense, but also to bring into the public domain to enhance the sportsman's access where it also makes sense, but to do it in an efficient way.
Well, efficiency and federal government don't always go along, so I understand that. But another question comes to mind here is paying for it. The states, in fact, our state, Washington State, they have a hard time keeping their state parks open, let alone managing.
As does the federal government. There's a tremendous backlog of maintenance in the federal park system as well.
Any other thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners about this subject?
Only that the primary goal, and one of the reasons we're having this meeting here, is to look at ways that we can improve the ability of the public to utilize those lands that are public lands, to improve access, to make sure the Forest Service and other federal agencies take into account and listen to the people that rely on public lands for either recreation, for their livelihoods. For all kinds of activities. These lands, especially in places like north central Washington, are essential to the economies of these communities. And I want to make sure that people are able to utilize these lands while we're protecting them, while we're utilizing conservation efforts, but allow people to have access to the public lands as they should.
Representative Newhouse, thank you so much for taking the time today to explain all this to our listeners on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you. I appreciated being with you.
Right after this conversation I had with Representative Newhouse, he went downstairs into the hangar of Executive Flight located next to Pangborn Airport in East Wenatchee. He was joined by Representative Rob Bishop from the state of Utah, who is the chair of the Natural Resources Committee in the House of Representatives. And the two fielded questions from an audience of some 80 people or so. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of passionate people there who work in the outdoors industry or volunteer and recreate outdoors. And there was a lot of people very upset about how the U.S. Forest Service is managing the lands here in north central Washington. Here's a few things that were brought up. Number one, timber had been burned over 2 years in the Carlton Complex fires in Okanagan County. And turns out it takes 18 to 24 months to get the permits necessary to salvage this timber, for the timber companies to go in there and get this wood out. The problem is that timber, after 12 months, loses its value. So you've got all of this burned timber, which is just going to fall and decompose, and A, it's a waste, and B, it provides more fuel for future fires. Other issues brought up included volunteers who were working to keep trails open in north central Washington. One woman who is a member of one of these organizations pointed out that the average age of their membership is 65 years old, and they are forced to use cross-cut saws. That's right, hand saws to cut through the logs and the timber that falls across the trails or poses danger there. They're not allowed to use chainsaws in the wilderness, and the Forest Service is not making exceptions to that here locally, even though they have the ability to do so if they want to. Another person who clears roads for the Forest Service in north central Washington pointed out that this year, even though he's volunteering to do this for them, they are asking him to pay $1,200 for gravel to put on the road, their own road, that they're not maintaining, they're asking volunteers to do. And then there was a story of a longtime outfitter from the Winthrop area whose livelihood is being shackled by the threats of lawsuits from environmental groups, and who's looking at a reduction in the days he's going to be able to pack in guests into the wilderness areas in north central Washington, something he's been doing for years To be honest, the whole concept of transferring lands from the federal government to the state governments really never came up. There was a lot of people upset, though, as you can tell, about how the Forest Service is doing their business. There actually was one person there from the U.S. Forest Service who was taking notes. I asked if I could speak with her. She said she was not willing to speak with me, and so I gave her a card, asked her to please have somebody from the Wenatchee-Okanagan National Forest talk to me about the issues that were raised. As of this time, I have not heard a thing. And again, it's frustrating. Improvements can certainly be made, and I hope that they will, but it looks like we might have a ways to go before we get there. Stick around. Right after our extended Max Minute, we're going to talk to a member of Trout Unlimited, the Backcountry Hunter and Anglers Association, who's going to help me analyze exactly what happened today and give us his take on whether it's a good deal or not for sportsmen and women if control of Forest Service lands is turned over to the states.
Leupold has been building optics in Oregon since 1907, and Leupold binoculars bring excellent optical performance and modern styling to the serious outdoorsman. Whether you're a boater, birder, backpacker, or hunter, Leupold's state-of-the-art binocular lines are sure to fit your needs. Visit Leupold.com or your local Cabela's, Bi-Mart, or Sportsman's Warehouse to see the full line of Leupold optics.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
You're back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's time again for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company. With us again is Lance Mers. Lance, fall is here. The fish are on the bite. What is a lure that you like to use this time of year to get fish in?
You know, John, I think probably one of the most versatile lures that we have in our arsenal is called the Sonic Bait Fish. It's a jigging spoon, but it's got versatility to it where you can jig this, you can cast it, you can troll it. It comes in, different sizes from 1/16 ounce all the way up to our brand new 1 ounce size.
It's funny, and I'm getting ahead of myself here because I'm thinking winter already. That new one that's only 1/16 of an ounce, that's got to be a dynamite ice fishing lure, you would think.
It's absolutely fantastic. And when you're jigging on the drop, it emulates a dying bait fish. And when you're jigging up, it gives it a lot of vibration in the water, so it really attracts those fish into your location.
And the other thing about the Sonic Bait Fish, you can hook it in the nose, you can hook it in the tail, or you can hook it right in the center of the back. And depending on how you hook it and retrieve it, you're going to get different action, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So, there you go. It's the Sonic Bait Fish. It's a great jigging spoon, whether you're fishing for trout or pike or walleye or anything else out there. Go ahead and get a few of these, put them in your tackle box and use them. They work. Find out more at maxlure.com.
That's the sound you hear when a fish hits the new Sonic Bait Fish from Max Lure Company. This metal lure can be cast, trolled, or jigged and will catch just about anything that swims in the sea, the river, or the lake. The Sonic Bait Fish has a unique vibration and flutter that can be rigged in 7 different ways. With all sorts of eye-catching colors and weights available, you'll be reaching for the Sonic Bait Fish as your go-to lure. It's the Sonic Bait Fish. And that's another fish on, only from Max Lure Company.
Sonic Boom's not included with the Sonic Bait Fish Strike unless you are fishing for jet fighters.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
If you've ever been fishing in Mexico, you know how good it can be, and now you can fish there with the Real News. Take your choice of a trip to Baja's East Cape for roosterfish, marlin, and dorado. These trips are value priced, so you can stretch your dollars in fun. To find out more about fishing Mexico with the Real News, log on to therealnews.com or call 425-334-8966. Again, that's therealnews.com or 425-334-8966 for an incredible adventure.
Wetlands are some of the most important ecosystems on Earth, but our wetlands are quickly disappearing. Find out how you can help. Join Ducks Unlimited today.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We just attended a public lands meeting. It was a Q&A with Chairman Bishop and Representative Newhouse, both members of Congress on the Natural Resources Committee, and it was supposed to be about public lands management, and I guess it was, but not in the way that I thought it was going to be. With us here with some point-by-point discussion of what we just heard is Greg Profundo with Trout Unlimited and the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. You know, I thought that the main topic was going to be them advocating control of our federal public lands, Forest Service lands, BLM lands, turning those over to the state for control. And that never really came up at all, did it?
No, it didn't. And I was a little surprised by that. But I did notice that, right at the end there, Bob Bishop managed to get in a jab about the federal government owning something like 30% of the West. And he wanted to break that up. So, I think that was sort of his underlying message, and I don't know whether he's using symposiums like this to get cover for that message, but, that's something that sportsmen, we hear it loud and clear, and we won't stand for it.
What was discussed in great detail over an hour and a half was basically the inefficient management of our public lands, specifically by the U.S. Forest Service. A lot of angry people in there.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is honestly the fault of Congress to fully fund the Forest Service going back decades. If Congress had funded the Forest Service the way they should, these problems wouldn't exist. And now that they've throttled back on the Forest Service's ability to actually do its job, now the same people that won't fund the Forest Service are saying, well, look, the Forest Service isn't doing a good job, so we need to take over.
I spoke to Congressman Newhouse about this, and surprisingly, he is in favor of a bill that basically would allocate funds through FEMA and treat wildfires as a disaster. Because as we both know, over 50% of the U.S. Forest Service budget is being used for fire suppression, and that leaves basically nothing left for trail maintenance and road maintenance and operating campgrounds and the things that we love to enjoy in our national forests.
Yeah, that actually came as a surprise to me. I wasn't aware of that bill. I think that any way that we can fund the Forest Service to fight fires is a positive thing. I think it's important, though, to keep in mind that last year's fire, the Okanagan Complex fire, the majority of that fire burned state and private land. It actually didn't burn Forest Service land. That said, the Forest Service should not have to pull money out of its regular budget to fight these fires. If a hurricane rolled through Okanagan County, the money would come from somewhere else. It wouldn't come from our regular budgets. So I think that, if Congress and if guys like Bob Bishop want to see better management and want to see better proactive management and collaboration on our public lands, they need to help properly fund them.
I would agree with that, though I did like some of what I heard. They were talking about audits. They were talking about giving more direction to the Forest Service. And, even talking to folks at the top tiers of the Forest Service, they'll tell you they're far from perfect. They are a big federal government agency, and there are inefficiencies there.
Yeah, there are. I've worked really closely with the Forest Service here on many different work groups, and they're people just like the rest of us. I think that there are always efficiencies that we can find in the federal government. Maybe we start with Congress. There's always efficiencies that we can gain. I think it's just important to remember, though, that Congressman Bishop's MO is to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And he may call them efficiencies, but the reality of it is he doesn't want to see federal ownership of these lands. And his approach to that may appeal to certain groups, but, I think until you have boots on the ground, you really don't understand how the processes work. There's There's work groups that I've served on here in the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest that deal with ATVs. They deal with, stream buffers for logging and things like that. And they are collaborative. My county commissioners, one of them who was here, Ray Campbell, he lost his seat and he was primaried out, sat on various work groups with the Okanagan-Wenatchee Forest that I was on, and then complained that the Okanagan-Wenatchee Forest didn't give the county a voice. Those kind of two-sided arguments, they don't hold sway with me.
Greg, you live in Tonasket, Washington, north central Washington, not far from the Canadian border. You're surrounded by a lot of Forest Service land. Let's talk about what it would mean if these federal lands, Forest Service lands, in the area that you live in, an area that's rich with, deer hunting and ATV usage and lots of fishing, steelhead fishing on a good year, not so much this year. What is that going to mean if these Forest Service lands are transferred over to state control?
That's gone. Pure and simple. If these lands are transferred to the state, the lands will be sold.
And why would they be sold?
Well, the reason they would be sold is because, the federal government has the ability to run a deficit. The state can't run a deficit. You look at a prime example of this right now is the Teanaway Community Forest. I worked on the legislation to empower the state to purchase the Teanaway Community Forest, a place that has phenomenal elk hunting, phenomenal deer hunting, turkey hunting. It's got great fishing. And the state we paid $90 million of our tax dollars to purchase that piece of land as part of the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. And what we've got now is, now that the state owns it, they're refusing to fund it. The legislature will not fund any of the habitat restoration that needs to go on. They won't fund the basic maintenance. And what we see is that when the state suddenly inherits, say, use the Okanagan National Forest as an example, 8,000 miles of roads, when they can't even fund Highway 97, how are they going to be able to fund an additional 8,000 miles of roads? So because of that, because the state can't run a deficit, the state's going to be forced to sell them. And don't be fooled by the myth that transfer is a friendly thing. Transfer equals sale. Pure and simple. If these lands are transferred to the states can't afford to manage them, they will have to sell them off.
Well, you bring up a good point. And if you take a look at the three agencies that would inherit it, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, they've been in budget trouble for 2 years running. They're looking at raising license fees just to try to tread water. Washington State Parks, they nearly closed a couple dozen parks just a few years ago. They constantly have funding issues. And DNR, like you said, they're not in the business of outdoors recreation. They're in the business of making money for the state, and a lot of that would be through selling these lands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to tie in a little story about DNR. Congressman Newhouse held a work group fairly similar to this in the spring that talk about these catastrophic fires that we had. And something that was really interesting that came out of that was that Peter Goldmark got up and made a speech, and an impassioned speech about how much he loves the Okanagan, how much he cares about the Okanagan, how it's his home. He actually choked up a little bit. And when he was done talking, he left. And he didn't listen to one single second of public comment. Not a second of public comment. The Forest Service stayed and took their licks. The BLM stayed. The federal government stayed and took their licks and offered proactive solutions to prevent a situation like this from happening again. And, I think that just points to the fact that the federal government are the bad guys right now because they own it. But I can damn well bet that if Olympia owned it, they would be the bad guys. The solution isn't transferring who's in authority. The solution is working collaboratively with organizations you might disagree with to come up with proactive solutions for forest health and things that will better hunting and fishing habitat in Washington State.
We've got to go, but for those of you who don't know, Peter Goldmark is the Commissioner of Public Lands. He's in charge of the Department of Natural Resources in Washington State. He is outgoing commissioner. A new one's going to be elected this fall, and we'll see if things get a little bit better under the new tenure. In the meantime, we are running out of time, but let's give out a couple websites for folks to find out more about public lands issues, because I know certainly if you go to backcountryhunters.org, the Backcountry Hunter and Angler site, you're going to find info there. Are you going to find information on the TU site too?
Yeah, absolutely. www.tu.org.
Greg, thanks so much for your analysis of what we just heard here and sharing it on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks, appreciate it.
This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking. From camp stoves to cast iron, from smokers to grills, Camp Chef will change the way you cook outdoors. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Whether you're serving breakfast in the backcountry or barbecue on the back patio, savor the simplicity with Camp Chef. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Come experience the wonder of Oregon's seventh wonder, the Wallowas. Located in the heart of Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County, you'll find yourself anticipating the thrill of experiencing and exploring this rugged country. Join up with some of Oregon's premier guide services and ride into the Eagle Cap Wilderness, or float the Wallowa, Grand Ronde, or Wild Snake River. Bring the family and experience one of Oregon's 7 wonders, and you'll wonder why you haven't been here before. Your experience begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
You led a good life. You ate lots of corn. You found a wife, and 2 fawns were born. But early this morning, you scampered past me. So I aimed and I shot. Now I got you roped up in my tree.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz, and it's time to share some field reports with you. We'll start off with South Central Montana's hunting report from the opening weekend of antelope season. Turns out warm, breezy weather throughout South Central Montana made for comfortable hunting and brought out a lot of hunters, too. This resulted in a larger antelope harvest than last year. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks ran 3 check stations, collecting hunter information at Broadview, Billings, and Big Timber. The check stations counted 676 hunters compared to 643 last year. Those hunters this year had 331 antelope, a big increase from the 254 pronghorns harvested a year earlier. And 46% of the hunters who stopped had game, up from 39% during the same weekend last year. At Billings, wildlife research specialist Jay Watson said about 2/3 of the big game hunters who stopped were pursuing antelope, while the rest were hunting elk in the Bull Mountains or Missouri Breaks. He also talked to 29 upland game bird and waterfowl hunters. Most of the antelope bucks checked at Billings had horns measuring at least 13 inches, with several longer than 14 and 2 nice 15-inchers. Bird hunters found good numbers of pheasants, but other species were harder to come by. Heading to Idaho, the Fish and Game Department there is publishing their steelhead harvest reports again, and for the week of October 3rd through the 9th, the hot spot to be at was the Clearwater River, where 57 anglers caught 48 steelhead between the Memorial Bridge and the Orofino Bridge. The Snake River downstream from the salmon wasn't bad either. 178 anglers caught 70 fish there, and I'd wager most of those were probably caught near Heller Bar. Effort was light on the Snake between the Salmon River and Hell's Canyon Dam, and anglers averaged just over half a fish each. As for the Salmon River, well, it's just not happening yet. In fact, from the mouth of the Salmon all the way to the confluence of the Lemhi River, only 32 steelhead were caught, despite the efforts of close to 300 anglers who were checked. Looks like Salmon River anglers might have to wait a little longer until the action heats up for them. Heading to Southwest Oregon, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife reports bank anglers are catching salmon right off the Coos Bay City Boardwalk. They're also catching them at Isthmus Slough and the mouth of Daniels Creek. 800 trophy trout were recently released into Fish Lake, and fishing for trout has been improving at Howard Prairie Reservoir as temperatures have cooled. Trout in the 14 to 19-inch range are being caught by both bank anglers and boat trollers. The Upper Rogue has been fishing fairly well for summer steelhead with not a whole lot of pressure. Chinook fishing has been spotty in the tidewater portions of the main stem Umpqua, but coho are being caught. However, remember only hatchery coho can be harvested there. Checking Winchester Bay, bottom fishing as well as surf perch fishing has been good. And last but not least, bass fishing in 10 Mile Lakes and on the Coquille River has also been good. And turning to the Evergreen State, there's a lot of people fixated on coho and blackmouth salmon right now, but don't forget trout. Washington State has a really good fall stocking program for lakes throughout the state every fall, and better still, a lot of the trout being stocked at this time of year are a pound in size or better. Here's just a few of the lakes that have been stocked with big trout this month. Leland Lake in Jefferson County got 2,000 one-pound fish. Beaver Lake, always a perennial fall favorite, in King County got 2,400 two-pound fish this week. Island Lake in Mason County got 2,100 one-pound trout, and Campbell Lake in Skagit County got 300 1.5 to 2-pound fish. In addition to this, Dry Lake in Chelan County was stocked with 1,000 tiger trout this month, though they are about 3 to a pound there, not as big as the other ones. But nearby Wapato Lake, which is close to Manson, got a small plan of 250 2-pound trout just over a week ago. You take all of these reports together, and it's pretty obvious there is some decent fishing going on this month in the Northwest. Next on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, not everybody gets their deer during the opening weekend. I know that's when most people are out. Certainly lots of crowds, certainly a lot of success, but a lot of you have not notched your tag yet. So we've got somebody here who's got some advice on how to do so, how to get that buck after opening day. His name is Joe Mosier. He works at Sportsman's Warehouse in East Wenatchee. He's also a hunting guide, and his specialty, bighorn sheep and mule deer. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks, John.
So, Joe, for those people out there that haven't notched their tag on opening day weekend, what advice would you give them so they can go ahead and still bring home a buck?
Well, first of all, what you want to do is get away from the roads. One canyon, two canyons, the further away from you get away from the roads, the less people you're going to see, the more deer you're going to see. They'll be down in those bottom of the canyons in the brush. They really won't move all that much. You could throw rocks, but really you have to get down in there and beat the brush, get those animals up, because it's just ridiculous trying to beat them out of there.
When it comes to pressure, is that hunting pressure from opening weekend, is that actually physically moving the deer to different locations than they were before?
It is. Normally they're going to be in your very easy areas. They're not going to work any harder than they have to go eat, and when they start getting pressured, they're going to go down into the deep, dark canyons that nobody wants to go to because it's like a mile down to the bottom of there, and I don't want to pack it out. But that's what you got to do.
When it comes to time of day, everyone always talks about early in the morning. Is that really the only time to do it, or can you get them throughout the day?
You can get them throughout the day, and I found this years ago, late in the season. I would go back to the areas that I've known that the deer bed all the time. I constantly see them there, and that's where you want to go. You want to go back to those areas. There might be a bunch of deadfall, and you got to look hard. I've spent 3-4 hours watching a hillside that's 400 yards away from me, and 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and all of a sudden I see the buck laying there, and I'm like, he's 300 yards away. Why didn't I see him? Because his head was down and his horns look like dead branches. You go back to those bedding areas, because they will.
And I guess that brings up one last point. You're telling folks to get off the roads, but glassing and spotting is still important. If you're just tromping around the woods and tromping around the canyons, you're probably not going to do much good. I mean, I'm guessing the chances of just jumping a buck and that's bedded down, it's going to be pure luck, isn't it?
When I was younger, I used to do that same thing, I was so full of energy, and, I'm going to go, and I'm going to go all day long, and I'd just hit the hills, and I would run all over the place, and then eventually you find them. As I got older, I got a little smarter, started using my optics more, and now I'm pure optic. I mean, I'm gonna search the hillsides with my optics, and then I'll find what I want, and then I'll go get it.
Well, there you go. There's some great advice for you. Bottom line is, get off those roads, start hiking in, find a ridgeline, find a hill, use those optics, and be patient, and look in places where you don't necessarily want to go. That's where the deer are going to be, and don't be afraid to hunt all day. Joe, thanks for sharing these great tips to help people get their buck this deer season.
Hey, yeah, good luck, everybody.
I'd like to tell you I just brought down that buck, but I didn't. I missed. And you know why I missed? Because of the scope I've got on my rifle. You see, my friends told me to get a Leupold rifle scope. Why? Well, because Leupold is America's optical authority. They make a huge variety of quality scopes for every need, and they make them right here in the Northwest. Unfortunately, I didn't listen. I used the cheap scope that came with this rifle when I bought it. And when it came time to pull the trigger, well, let's just say things were a little blurry. Now, I've got nothing to look forward to except a long, empty-handed walk back home. Next time I come out into the field, there's going to be a Leupold scope on my rifle. And next time, I'm not going to miss.
Leupold rifle scopes. Check out the whole line at leupold.com and look for them at a sporting goods store near you.
Ducks Unlimited is the leading waterfowl and wetlands conservation organization in the world. Here in Idaho, we've lost nearly 76% of our wetlands. Ducks Unlimited is working to stop that loss. In Idaho alone, DU has restored and conserved over 27,000 acres of wetlands. Learn more about the benefits of wetlands and what Ducks Unlimited is doing for Idaho's future. Visit ducks.org/Idaho.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
One more time this week for Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
Let's run through a couple of upcoming events taking place at Sportsman's Warehouse stores around the Northwest. The first one we told you about last week. If you're a Saturday listener and you live anywhere close to Bend, head to the Sportsman's Warehouse store between 1 and 3 p.m. today. Why? Because they're going to show you how to make a smoked turkey. That's right. You'll learn how to inject them. You'll learn about the rubs. You'll learn about the different flavors and how to smoke a turkey. It'll be the greatest Thanksgiving day ever, and you can get a sample, maybe even sneak two if you're lucky, and taste how good these birds can be. Again, that's today, 1 to 3 p.m. for our Bend listeners at the Sportsman's Warehouse store. On Thursday, October 27th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Salem Sportsman's Warehouse store, there's going to be a seminar on hunting fall black bear. You'll learn all the basics you need to go out there and bag a bruin. And finally, next Saturday, the 29th, from 2 to 3 p.m. at the Federal Way Sportsman's Warehouse store, it's time to get ready for elk camp. That's right, elk season is here again, and they're going to have a seminar in its honor. You can stop by and see what you need to stay warm, dry, and happy after a long day of stalking your bull. These are just a few of the events taking place at Sportsman's Warehouse stores. Go to their website. You'll find it at sportsmanswarehouse.com. And once you get there to the front page, scroll down to the left bottom portion of the page, look for store events, and find an event at a store near you. And remember, these events, every one I mentioned, free of charge. Almost all of these seminars at Sportsman's Warehouse are free of charge, and they help you become a better person in the field and on the water. And now, it's time for your Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week. Do you remember that awesomely funny Thanksgiving promotion clip from the TV show WKRP in Cincinnati? In it, the station manager was dropping live turkeys out of a helicopter from 2,000 feet for a Thanksgiving Day promotion. The promotion did not go well, and the turkeys fell like, well, wet sacks of cement to the ground, all caught on a live and melodramatic broadcast by WKRP reporter Les Nessman. At the end of the clip, the station manager, looking shell-shocked, comes into the station and says, "As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly." You can check out the clip on our Facebook page at Northwestern Outdoors Radio. You'll probably get a chuckle out of it too. But Mr. Carlson, the station manager's phrase, brings up the question of the week. We've got plenty of wild turkeys here in the Northwest, and our question is this: can these turkeys fly? If you think you know the answer about our wild turkeys and their flight capabilities, let me know. You can do so through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. Go to the Contact Us page and let us know if turkeys can fly or not. Or if you prefer, go to our Facebook page, check out that video we've got there, and then give us your answer there. Somebody who guesses right is going to win the $25 gift card we give away every week from Sportsman's Warehouse. And as you heard when we talked about that Bend seminar, you might be able to use that to buy some supplies so you can have a great smoked turkey. When you get a chance, check out another website. It's the home of WRVO Radio. It's RenoViolaOutdoors.com. It's an internet station, has over 30 outdoors programs from all over North America, and it covers the entire gamut 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Northwestern Outdoors Radio is one of the programs that airs there, as is our sister show, America Outdoors Radio, which covers the outdoors with a strong focus on the western United States. Find out more about that show at our website of AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. And if your station isn't carrying it, contact them and ask them to carry America Outdoors Radio. That's all for this week. As you can tell, there is a whole lot to talk about, think about, and do when it comes to managing our public lands, but I would suggest that keeping these lands public and in federal hands is a lot better than transferring them to states and counties who would be forced to sell them off, because when that happens, we lose opportunities we will never get back again. Something to think about. Until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.